welcome to the PitchVision Academy Cricket Show. This is a little oasis of cricket for you for a short while, and we're going to talk about the game, playing the game, coaching the game, improving your cricket, improving the cricket of others. And who are we? Well, my name's David Hinchliffe. I look after things, and helping me to help you are two very fine cricket coaches. The first is the Director of Cricket at Millfield School. It's Mark Garaway. Hello, Gareth.
How are you? Okay?
Very good, thank you very much. Yeah, just getting back into some cricket once now the end of season break has sort of started to close off now, and we're getting the kids coming back in and doing lots of fun cricket stuff with beginners and young ones and slightly older ones, and it's all starting to kick off very quickly. So still quite a long way from the season, but it's no time like the present, as you might say, Gareth.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it, to give people a little bit of a break, and then they sort of come back wanting to, don't they? They get that sort of itchy feeling they want to be hitting a ball or bowling a ball or catching a ball, and it's always a nice place to be at the start of that winter period where they're keen as mustard and ready to go.
Yeah, especially as I'm working with quite a few new guys this year, different teams, different sets of players. So whenever you come across a new set of players, it presents a new set of challenges, and that inspires you quite a lot as well, doesn't it? You don't think, it's the same old faces again. You're coming up with new things, new ideas, new way of doing things, which is always exciting.
I think it's good, isn't it, that the new player that comes in, or the new set of players that come in, they just reinvigorate you as a coach, don't they? And even in football, somebody like Alex Ferguson was always reinvigorated by new players coming in. And I can certainly relate to that from a cricket point of view as well.
Secondly, it's the head of cricket performance at Portsmouth Grammar School. It's Sam Lavery. Hello, Lavers. How's it going?
Yeah, really well, thanks. Beautiful day down here, enjoying the sunshine, and got a couple of days off, so watching a bit of cricket on TV and then relaxing, really.
Yeah, well, that sounds all right. Well, hope we can interrupt that relaxation for some cricket chat for the next few minutes. See if we can come up with a couple of good ideas for people.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk this week about the challenge of people outside of your team. In this particular case, I was thinking about all the different people who are in and around your team who aren't necessarily part of the team that you play in or the team that you coach, and how you get the values of your team across to people who are sort of on the periphery. I'm talking about people like parents or coaches of other teams, or even coaches of other teams within the same club, or members of the committee. People who have some kind of a stake in your team but aren't necessarily part of the team. And often you will get people with differing opinions on how you should do things. But obviously as the coach or as a senior player or anything like that, you will want the team to be in the image that it's in. So how do you help people recognise what the values of a team are, and particularly when it comes to when people disagree with that, but they've still got a stake, so you still need to keep them sweet, but you don't necessarily want to go down the road that they want you to go down. It's a difficult thing to negotiate, isn't it? How do we get through that maze?
Well, through a lot of communication, really, and I think you can never start that process too early. As soon as you can get a group of parents in, and often with parents it's quite easy because they tend to come along to the first few sessions, so that's the time really to do some work outside of a session with them. So if you've got enough coaches around, or you've got enough pairs of hands, I would then plan the session and let the other coaches do that session, and spend some time in a fairly informal fashion talking to the parents about the way that we go about things, and in particular it's that whole development process versus winning an outcome type conversation that I want to be having as soon as possible. So with parents, I find that if I can have that early and then just keep drip feeding that in over the course of time, then I notice that their language changes, their expectations shift, and they become more aligned with what the kids and ourselves are working with over time. But get early communication in there, and then just drip feed would be my approach. Other coaches coming in, I think, can be a bit of a longer process and probably a more formalised process. So again, I have coaches coming into my environment, on a regular basis. And really, I set my stall out again very early to make sure, maybe even before they arrive with them, that they know exactly where I'm coming from, where the school is coming from, because obviously myself and school are fairly aligned with our processes around development, and then get that information in. And again, get them to ask as many questions as they possibly can, even if those questions can be counter questions to the approach that we're going for. The more you discuss that, the better. I think the difficult one is committee, isn't it? And we see this all of the time within professional sport as well as in club sport, because people come from different backgrounds, they have different motivations, and that's the real tricky one. And ultimately, what I tended to do when I was working with committees was to gravitate initially towards the ones who were on board or could be quite easily persuaded towards a more long-term approach rather than a short-term approach. And then over the course of time get them and myself to sort of convert the others a little bit as well, and give those the information. But ultimately it comes down to communication, and you're going to get a few knockbacks, you're going to get a few awkward questions. You've got to accept that, take that on the chin, and as long as you're really sure about the way you're going about it, you've got some good evidence, got some good support about the way you're going about it, just keep dripping it in, and eventually you get somewhere near that sort of optimal position. I've never got there yet, but you get somewhere towards it.
Lavers, from the point of view of if you've got different teams, within the same, for example, in a school, a situation like you're in, where you've got different age groups and you've got different people coaching at different age groups, and you want to keep that, the same feeling throughout the different age groups. Is that? But maybe you have different coaches with different ideas, and obviously that's a good thing. But how do you sort of keep things? Have the coaches do the things that they want to do, but also still working towards the same values?
I think a big part of that is having those values being agreed across the board at some stage earlier in the process. So Gareth has said there that obviously he wants to get that message across to parents early on, so that when they do come in, he gets an opportunity to explain the process and how they want to work. Very similar with your coaches. Before you get into your actual process of coaching and working with the boys and girls and playing matches as well, you need to have an agreed set of values as to how you want to approach a session and how you want to approach a season or a match. So having their involvement and having their input, and it's important that it's something that everyone can buy into, because if you start preaching at people and saying this is how you want to do it, you're going to take their individuality and their skills and their opinions away from them, which you don't want to do, because ultimately you've got a group of you there, because hopefully more minds you have, the more you can produce from them. So yeah, just try and make sure that everyone's involved in that process early on. It probably is that Gary's used the kind of word there of formal, informal, and it probably is a slightly more formal process when you're going to talk to your coaches, and it's probably something that you want to have written down, and you want to have a few of the kind of ideas or the ethos of what you're trying to achieve. You want to have that really established and in paper, but maybe it's something you do revisit as well fairly regularly. In this school environment, I'm pretty lucky, and Gareth is probably the same, that he's probably involved in a lot of sessions and probably sees a lot of the kids throughout the time. Not all the time. There'll be times when they're away at matches and there'll be sessions going on that you can't be involved in, but you do get reasonably good contact with most of the children. So you are able to have that communication. You are able to see coaches on a regular basis and just make sure that they're sort of staying or still committed to the same values that we set out earlier on, and hopefully that does happen. And just because you've set something out doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. So there will be times when you feel that you need to change a little bit, or you add something in, or you develop something you've got or something you've talked about. But ongoing contact and ongoing communication is going to make that a lot easier. And hopefully that kind of open forum, whether it's from parents to you as a coach, or from other coaches to you as a coach, and that feeling that they can talk up, they can give their opinion, will put you in a place where everyone's able to talk and everyone's able to understand what they should be trying to achieve.
And I guess one of the key things there is that there's a difference between someone being negative and saying that will never work, and the my way or the highway, or people who are open to discussion and talking about things and trying to work through things and trying to, make the best situation from what you've got. And you might disagree with each other over the exact details of that, but if you're all working towards something positive, then in the end, you're going to sort that out. Whereas if you've got people who are putting up resistance, being negative, what they would say is being realistic, of course, because that's always the argument of the negative person, is they're saying they're being realistic. But really, I think what it's down to is if you close off to it, then you suddenly have a problem, because there's no room to grow anymore. There's no room to compromise. There's no room to work things out. But if you stay open but are ready to discuss things, then that's going to get you a lot further.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, mate. You got to take people with you, and that's why a regular, consistent drip feed of stuff is really good, because often if you hit people with all of the information once, then they're gonna get scared of it, because it's a lot to take in at any given point. And secondly, if they then don't hear those same messages being delivered in a drip feed fashion over a long period of time, then they're going to think, well, that was just put up as being something impressive at the start of the season or the start of a winter program, as you're in now, and it's just white noise. So I think little and often is really a great approach. It's not too dissimilar to coaching, really, and doing some technical intervention. Rather than just dumping stuff on people, go little and often, let them come back to you with their feedback, react off of that feedback. But ultimately, a lot of these things are so simple. Some of the processes that you put in place around kids and cricketers and committee members, they're such simple principles that there isn't a huge amount of argument around it. If you're putting something together which is getting a huge amount of argument back because of its complexity, then you've probably bitten off more than you can chew. So I would go very small little chunks, little and often, as regularly as you can, without being too overbearing, and you'll start to shift perceptions, shift attitudes, and shift expectations, which is so important.
Yeah, relentlessly driving towards what you want is always a good thing. A little bit at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. It is, and that word relentless can sound a little bit overbearing at times, but if your chunks are small and you're just consistently dropping those in, then it's amazing how you then notice that language starts to change and performance starts to change as a result.
Let's answer some questions that have been sent into the show by listeners, or perhaps readers to the PitchVision website over at pitchvision.com. And we do this every week, but just to remind you what we do, we answer those questions and then we pick the best question of the week, which wins a prize, an online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at pitchvision.com. We'll tell you about how to get in touch with the show towards the end, although you can email us on coach@pitchvision.com if you're desperate to get your question off right now. And one person who has sent in a question this week is Sharath. And Sharath says, "Hello, I'm from India. I find it difficult to play in the slog overs. We normally score 55 to 75 runs in the last 10. How do we improve this?"
Great question. People do find it difficult to play in the slog overs, and I think one of the challenges probably that you've got is that the language, and we just talked about language in the previous question, but the language around it is slog, and as a result of that can take on so many different things to so many different people, because as we've seen nowadays, whilst we're obviously looking to accelerate towards the back end of the innings, the way that people are getting significant scores in those last 10 probably isn't what we would have called a slog years ago. If somebody had said to you that you can score 140 runs in the last 10 overs way back when I was starting to play, then you'd associate that with slogging, wouldn't you? Because it would have been the only way to go about it. But actually the way that people go about their business nowadays isn't slogging. It's actually far more precise. It's almost surgical in the way that they take down a bowler or exploit spaces on the field, and the format and the regulations that are placed around that period of time in the game. So I think one simple thing will be to change your change your term for it, really. And you can call it whatever you want, but I think, when you look at the best practitioners, if you won't look at the best people, then it's more surgical than brutal, I suppose. And slogging can be deemed as a bit brutal. So that's my first slant on it. My second one is, it's great to have, you've given us a 55 to 75 run sort of spread that you hit. I'd be interested to see which bits of that spread, because that's quite a large number of runs. That's 20 run spread. Which is the most common? Where do you feature within that? Is it the bottom end or is it the top end? And if it's nearer the top end, then obviously you haven't got too far to go before you get into the realms of doing some pretty sparky stuff. So therefore we only have to change things by 10% as opposed to maybe a 20 or 30% rise to become really competitive and win games of cricket. So that would be my next point of call, is firstly language, secondly, where are we? Because that's quite a big spread. Are we towards the bottom end, towards 55, or are we towards 75? And if we're somewhere in the middle, then so be it, but at least we know where our starting point is. And then really have a look at what players you've got around and what their strengths are. And I think when the ball goes into those areas towards the end of the innings, the best players are the ones that have almost the least amount of options available to them, because they're very confident in the options that they can then play. So, you look at AB de Villiers. AB de Villiers will basically, when people are going towards the death, he will look to get outside off stump and flip the ball over backward square leg to fine leg or into that area, whether it be for 4 or often in his case for 6, particularly when the guy who's fine leg is up, so it gives him a bigger margin of error because he can get that slightly wrong but still get the direction right, and obviously the top edge isn't going to be caught because there's nobody back on the fence at fine leg. So that's one of his areas, and the other area is to hit straight down the ground or over extra cover. So he really keeps it as simple as that, and then if the ball goes outside of those two areas, then he backs his ability to be able to play a cut or whatever the case may be. But those are his two main areas that he's going for. Not dissimilar to somebody like Joss Butler, who does a very similar thing. He's looking fine leg, he's looking straight. So I see a lot of players in club cricket in particular that as they're setting up to face the ball in those last death overs, from the sidelines you haven't got a clue where they're going to be trying to hit it, what their aim is, what their base plan is, what their foundation that they can work off of is, and they could, they're reacting to the ball rather than being proactive. So find out in each of your players, maybe from 3 downwards, because any of those guys, well, even 1 I suppose downwards, they can all be in going towards the death overs. Just find out what they believe their best 2 areas are, get them to become really good at that, and then obviously being good at that you can then build off of and be reactive if the ball goes into other areas and just get bat on it or try and steer it into another one. But 2 areas for me at the end. If you can nail 2 and be really good at it, then you're going to put the bowler under a lot of pressure.
That word confidence is an important one, isn't it, Lavers, in that you can have so many different variables at that stage of the game. The number of wickets can be so variable. The type of pitch can be so variable. Whether you're setting a target or chasing a target can be so variable. So there's a lot of things you need to take into account before saying, okay, well, we need to score 100 off the last 10, otherwise we failed. So it's very important to bear that in mind. But I feel like if you've got confidence, that word confidence, then you can go in thinking to yourself, we're going to make the most of whatever we've got to do here. That rather than thinking about a specific number of runs and then adjusting for the variables, you're going in with the mind of, look, we know what we need to do, we know how we're going to do it, we just need to go and execute those skills. And sometimes the nature of death batting is that sometimes it doesn't quite work in the way that you want it to work. You've got to take those extra risks, haven't you? So you must have that confidence, and you must have practiced, and you must have tried to get the most from those overs by getting into the nets and doing the work, right?
Yeah, if you've got a bit of belief in the skills that you can put out there at that time of the game, then I think it's going to affect you in a few ways. You probably find your execution is going to be a bit better. So one of the things that you'll see when people aren't confident and maybe they're a little bit nervous about what they're doing is their execution can change, and people can be a little bit tighter in the way they swing a bat. People can be slightly different technically in how they go about striking a ball. But the other thing that will be affected is your decisions. And if you've still got that belief that you don't need to change away from your game plan, you don't need to move away from it because you trust yourself, then you're probably going to make smarter decisions rather than panicking a little bit earlier, and then you move away from those options you've got. If Gareth said there, if you can have two really clear shots, well, if you don't have that belief in those two shots, or you don't have your belief in your ability to score the runs, then you're going to move away from your game plan. You're going to go searching something else that's going to hopefully get you over the line. But in reality, you're better off sticking to the things that are tried and tested, the things that are practiced, the things that you know you can do. And if you have that extra belief, then you'll stick to them, and hopefully you'll spend more time executing shots that you've put a lot of time into practicing, rather than trying to take on the reverse ramps and the clever shots over extra cover if you haven't practiced them or whatever it might be. So having that confidence is certainly an enormous part of the run chase, and I guess that comes from that training time, creating that situation in training, talking about it with the bowlers and the coach, and trying to get the bowlers to bowl the type of thing they might do in that scenario, and seeing if you can execute the skills you want. And in between times, can you turn the strike over? So if you can't get one of your two big zones, can you get down the other end, rotate the strike? So it's not ... 4, it's 1-1-4, and that changes the dynamic of a game very quickly as well. And once you've done it in training, and you manage to take it on the field, people get that. They get the bug, don't they? They finish your game really well. They're clinical, and we can see people around the world. We can look at Virat Kohli as an example, but someone who has convinced everyone that he's incredible at chasing down a score because he has been very, very good. But it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? You believe you can do it. They believe you can do it. Shock horror. You go out there and do it. So that's another part of that whole confidence thing that's gonna get you over the line.
If you look at players like MS Dhoni, he's a fantastic modern day finisher of a game. You know, he's got two areas really that he's fantastic at. You know, he doesn't create huge amounts of angles and stuff like that. He actually hits two or three areas unbelievably well. And of course the bowler and the captain know that he's going to do that. And that puts a huge amount of pressure on the people that are letting go of the ball, the people that are putting the strategies together, because they've become masterful at doing two or three things. Last week I was with Paul Collingwood, and again 10 years ago, you know, was one of the best one-day players in the world, but Collie had quite what people perceived as being a limited game. But actually what he did was just make sure that everybody knew how good he was at basically whacking it from mid-off to backward square leg and fine leg. You know, there was no secret to it. But equally, as a bowler who's run up to bowl, knowing full well that if he misses his area, then he's going to get punished. That's a lot of pressure for a bowler and a lot of pressure for the person that's marshalling his troops.
Next question is from Yuvraj. And Yuvraj says, can you please suggest what is the best diet for a fast bowler? And we've had these kind of questions before, but it's probably worth going over it again, although we're not nutritionists, of course, but we can certainly offer some basic ideas, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot about what you shouldn't be eating most of the year.
I was going to say, Gareth, what's the worst diet you've seen from a fast bowler first?
I have to, from a worst
good point.
Fast bowling, that's a great question. Who would have been a great example of somebody? Well, it'd be easy to look at somebody like Goffey, wouldn't it, and say that he'd have had a bad diet. Now, I should imagine that Goffey's diet's probably not as good now as it was when he played, because a lot of the time the guys almost have their diet constrained, because the nature of cricket is that you're on the road, you're playing quite a lot, you're at grounds, and often you've only got a limited amount of options available to you when you're at cricket grounds. And in particular, when we used to go away to subcontinent, because people were so scared initially of food hygiene, we'd actually have quite simple food. So if I look back on that food, we had a lot of boiled vegetables, we had a lot of chicken available, grilled chicken was available to us, a lot of tuna steaks, grilled tuna steaks were available, so obviously that's the protein element of it. And then we'd have mashed potato, we'd have baked beans, which would have carbohydrate and protein in there, And it was pretty simple stuff, to be honest with you, around game time. And then one of the things, and one of the best guys that I work with is a guy called Darren Vaness, who has just finished at Somerset, actually, after being there, I think, 21 years he was there, who looked after the sports science element and looked after the diet element. And Somerset, have become renowned as being one of the fittest teams and most switched on teams in terms of sports science around the circuit. And one of the things that he did really well was make sure that when you were coming back from away games, inevitably you're going to stop at a service station on the way back or whatever. But he would have food available as the guys got on the bus, which was high quality food, lots of chicken, lots of protein, lots of vegetables. And then if they wanted to go and top up their food back in, and go and get a KFC or whatever, at least they're putting that on top of some fantastic nutrition going in. So I don't think it's particularly difficult to sort out. The key one for me is protein, because from a fast bowling point of view, you're going to be doing a lot of work, you're running a lot of distance, you've got lots of forces going through your body, and so as long as you're getting decent amounts of calcium on board, decent amounts of protein, which helps us to recover relatively quickly, those muscles to recover quickly and build again, I think you can't go far wrong. But the more simple you can keep it, the better. From a fast bowler, that is for sure. But as you said earlier, mate, I'm certainly no expert, and it would be safe to say in half term this week I haven't been an expert in diet.
I'd add protein. I'd add vegetables, specifically vegetables, and not fruit, because it's a tough job bowling fast, and vegetables contain so many nutrients and are anti-inflammatory, and they help you recover as well as protein does. So there's definitely vegetables, probably the most hated food of all foods, yet also up there with protein is the most important. So I definitely add to that. I think
the question about vegetables though is how do you get them into your system? And I think the subcontinent do it brilliantly, because they add flavour, don't they? And one of the best things that you can do is have curried vegetables, because not only are you getting all of that vegetable element of it that you've just talked about, you're also getting the benefit of spices as well going in, and some of the medicinal and recovery elements to the likes of turmeric and paprika and various other things like that, and cumin are fantastic. So a really good way, and it's the way I get vegetables into my son who's 8. It's a very similar thing, is to make them into a curry, and then all of a sudden you're getting all sorts of benefits. So they do that very well out there.
A long time ago, I heard a real simple piece of advice when it comes to food, which is quite hard to follow actually, but it's very simple if you want to sort of have a guideline, which is only eat food that either you have made yourself from scratch or someone else has made from scratch, because it's very difficult to be unhealthy if the food is being made rather than bought from a packet. So, if you've made it or someone else has made it for you, then get it down your neck. Otherwise, think twice.
It's a great bit of advice. That is a great bit of advice. Although my treacle tart that I did the other day, which was exceptional, I'm not sure would meet your criteria, but I did make it myself.
But the point of that is, because it's so much trouble to make that treacle tart, you're not going to make it as often as if you just went and bought the one that was in Iceland. So you're going to eat it less in the long run. So even that point is a good one.
I think the main thing we always try and sort of talk about is just eating whole foods where you can, and it is quite a simple process. But you can obviously really fine tune your percentages of having 60-70% carbs on the way into performance, and then dropping that and having a bit more protein on the way out with your vitamins and minerals as well. But the first port of call is eat good food, eat foods that are naturally sourced rather than things, as you said, that have been pre-manufactured somewhere else. So if you can eat whole foods as a starting point, that's great. I guess the only thing we haven't touched on a lot is that kind of in-match diet and what you're going to do throughout performances, throughout a day, when you've got long spells, long days, possibly 2, 3, 4 days backing up one after the other, and trying to get food on at that stage, which is a little bit trickier when you're trying to make sure you get that good food in during your breaks, and you try and keep yourself going during your during each spell and each phase of play during the day, and I guess that does mean at time you're going to have things that are a bit manufactured, but we would regard something like a Powerade, we'd actually put that in the supplement category really, because we want to make sure that everything that we eat and drink is as natural as it can be, and beyond that you're supplementing because you don't have access to, and that's the idea. Is people think they jump on a supplement and they'll put a load of different shakes in at different times of the day and that kind of thing. If you can put real food and real drinks into your body first of all, then go for that, because that's going to be the best way to live. When you can't, that's when these fantastic supplements come into play, whether it's for protein or if it's for carb replacement or it's for energy or whatever it might be. But yeah, eat real stuff.
Yeah, there's always going to be exceptions where you can fit supplements and things in, but those are rare. I mean, people who, although probably there aren't too many fast bowlers who stock up the plate at tea with cakes and crisps and sandwiches and then go out and open the bowling. There's probably not too many of them. They're probably a little bit more conservative at tea if you're going to open the bowling. But if you've got guys who genuinely they can't even stomach anything if they're going to immediately go out and bowl, then yeah, something liquid is probably going to be better anyway. So there are exceptions definitely, but in the main, eat something that your grandmother or maybe for some of the younger people, your great grandmother would have recognised as food most of the time, and you won't go far wrong.
Yeah, and if you're a fast bowler, eat plenty of it.
Yeah.
Get plenty on board. You're going to do a lot of work, you're going to do a lot of damage to your body along the way, so make sure at least there's some energy in there.
Yeah, start the repair process as quick as you can.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing to balance with that is also sleep, isn't it? And getting water into it, really. Make sure you're hydrated. And Nigel Stockhill, who was with England for 9 years, overseeing their sports science, my best man and top bloke, he would always talk to the bowlers every night and he'd say, I know you're going to kill me for saying this, but make sure you eat well, make sure you drink loads of fluids, and that is water rather than anything else, lads. And then make sure you get some sleep. And if you do those things really well, then you're going to come back firing the next day more often than not. And when you're looking at their workloads in comparison with maybe a club bowler's workloads, it's so important to get that right. But even a club bowler, if we get that right over the course of a week, particularly around our training as well, then it's going to give us a great chance of staying injury free for longer and be able to put some stuff on the park every Saturday.
I think that touches on a sort of interesting I've seen in the past as well, Gareth. And obviously you say don't drink, and try not to drink anything else, drink your water and get your fluids on that way. Inevitably people are going to have a beer along the way, aren't they? And through the time I've spent away from school cricket, where it's not an issue really, but in senior cricket, even if you just, rather than kind of pushing people away from going and having the alcoholic drink, but still by ensuring they get a good amount of water in, it's going to slow down their consumption of everything else anyway. A bit like David said about the treacle tart kind of thing. If you're making it yourself rather than buying it from a shop, you're going to have it less often. If you're drinking plenty of fluid, first of all, that's water, you're less likely to be guzzling down your first beer in 17 seconds or whatever people can do. And you're probably going to sit on that first one for a good 45 minutes because you've already got all your water on board and you're already rehydrated. So you don't necessarily feel that quenching thirst to go and have your first beer or drink as fast as you might do.
And that is just about all we've got time for on the show this week. Before we go, we are going to do one more thing, which is to decide on the winner of the competition. The online coaching course from PitchVision Academy at pitchvision.com is up for grabs. And the two questions were Sharath's question about scoring in the death overs, or the slog overs as he called them, and Yuvraj's question about a diet for fast bowlers. Which one did you prefer this week, Gareth?
I'm going to go with the slog overs, and I'm doing little inverted commas around that as I say it. So getting some real clarity about your definition of that, and also how you go about that individually will really help to push those numbers way beyond 75.
Congratulations. And Gareth, if someone else was listening to the show, which I'm sure they are, and they wanted to send their question in, which I'm sure they do, then how can they get in touch with us?
They can give us a call on 0203 239 7543 or drop us an email on coach@pitchvision.com.
That's right. You can also get us through social media. The best way is to contact us through the pitchvision.com social media system. If you head over there, you can message us using the built-in messaging system. We're PitchVision Academy there. You can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/PitchVision Academy, and Twitter @PitchVision Acad. You can subscribe to the show. It comes out every week, and that's pretty easy to do. You just do a search for PitchVision Academy in your favourite podcast app, and you'll find us in there. Or if you want to do it via the PitchVision website over at pitchvision.com, then you can do that too. You can stream the show, you can download the show, you can get all the show notes for old shows, and also you can get all the articles and other videos and things that's going on over there. Head over to pitchvision.com/academy and click on the podcast link for all the details. That's all for this week. We hope you listen next week, but until then, have a good week. Cheers, Gareth. Cheers, Lavers.
Cheers, boys.